G'day wherever you may be around the world, and thank you for joining us once again on truth2u.org. That's truth, the number 2, letter U.org. It's season 2 of Torah Pearls. I'm Jono, and joining me in the virtual Truth to You studio, all the way from Ireland, is Jason of Spiritualbabies.net. G'day, mate.
G'day, and before we start, I just wanted to let everyone know that Jono's commitment to this series is above and beyond what it should be. He's crazy sick, and it's Thursday. This program's going, we don't normally talk about them when it's going out, but this program's going out in 24 hours. He has to edit it still. I'm quite exhausted. He's exhausted and knackered. And on top of that, Johnny's got a really sore throat and is very poorly, but he's dragged himself from his sick bed.
I've got a cold. Everyone. And I mean, I don't often have a cold when we're recording. How about that? In 5 odd years or more? I don't even know how long Truth to You's been going, but most of the time I've been able to avoid recording when I have a cold, but not today. I have a cold. And so this particular program, I think we should make it the Jason Spiritual Babies program. This is the Jason Spiritual Babies show.
Don't do that.
Can we put some special theme music here for you? But do you have some special theme music for the Jason Spiritual Babies show?
But don't do that.
No, send it to me. We'll put it here.
It'll be a real short show.
This is going to be a short show anyway.
Yeah. God says some stuff to Moses. Moses said it to the people. We should try and do that stuff. See you next week. Okay.
That's great. If you could wrap up the Torah in just one, that's great. God said stuff to Moses. Moses said to the people, we should do that stuff.
And we'll see you next week. No, let's crack on, because it's quite a big Torah portion. There seems to be split into 3 main areas, and I think we can do a reasonable job of going through that stuff. Now, I want to remind people, this doesn't constitute you reading by just listening to us. You need to open up your Tanakhs and read this and study out for yourself. Don't take what we're saying as gospel.
You kind of want to in this program.
Yeah.
Because I'm not contributing at all. I don't feel well. This is just Jason. I want theme music. Okay. Behaalotcha. That's what we are. What does that mean? That means when you step up.
Right.
I think is what it means.
Raise up, yeah. Well, actually, I think it's when you send up, and it's to do with the opening 2 lines when the instruction to light the lamp is given, but actually it says when you cause the lamp to go up rather than when you light the lamp.
So what do you make of this? Because this is the first few verses in chapter 8. It begins in chapter 8 of the book of Numbers. And it's basically the Lord spoke to Moses saying, tell Aaron, when he sets up the menorah, put it in such a way so that it gives light in the place. That's basically what it's saying, isn't it?
Well, it is, but it starts with an and we have to remember that the last Torah portion finished with the 12 tribes bringing all of their gifts. And you have to imagine that the priestly sect, the Levites, are there looking at all these goodies and thinking, oh, what about me? And so, but that wasn't the end. The 12 princes bring their offerings to the sanctuary. And once that's done, God says, right, and Moses, you have to get Aaron to do this because this is his part of the job description. This is what the princes have to do. This is what you have to do. And so then we move on to their part of what needs to be done, okay. starting with the menorah.
Starting with the menorah, and then continuing from verse 5, there's the cleansing ceremony of the Levites, and it says in verse 10, so you shall bring the Levites before the Lord and the children of Israel, and they shall lay their hands on the Levites, Jason. They'll lay their laying on of hands, boy. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to read verse 19 primarily because I underlined it, and now I don't remember why I did, but okay. I'm going to read it because I underlined it. And it says, and I have given the Levites as a gift to Aaron and his sons from among the children of Israel to do the work of the children of Israel in the tabernacle of meeting, to make atonement for the children of Israel, that there be no plague among the children of Israel when the children of Israel come near the sanctuary.
And one of the cool things about verse 19, first is that the phrase children of Israel appears 5 times in that whole kind of speech. So that's how, there was a definite pointing towards children of Israel. But when atonement is mentioned, there's the Kippur word is actually a Kippur in the sense of a covering. So the
Covering, yeah.
So the Levites aren't atoning for Israel in the traditional sense that we would get used to the word atoning. They're covering Israel in that they're a barrier between Israel and the sanctuary. So they're a protection, if you like, in the same way that there was a cover over the ark when it was being carried. The Levites act in this particular verse. The meaning of that word there is that the Levites are a protective barrier between Israel and the sanctuary, so that they can't interact with it in the wrong way.
Now, here's a curious thing. I don't know if you picked this up. Verse 24, 23, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "This is what pertains to the Levites. From 25 years old and above, one may enter to perform the service of the work of the tabernacle or meeting." But that's not what we have in chapter 4, verse 3, if I remember correctly. It says from 30 years old and above. From 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, all who enter the service to do the work in the tabernacle of meeting. Now, when we were reading through that, you pointed out that the word service there is the word is warfare. All who enter the warfare to do the work of the tabernacle of meeting. And Tovia pointed out that quite often it was the Levites that would carry the ark out in front of the armies of Israel. Nevertheless, here we are in verse 24, and it says 25 years old and above, and that's a curious thing. And I think one way that there's really not much that can be done with that, but one way of reconciling that is that there is an understanding that perhaps there was a 5-year apprenticeship.
That makes sense. Yep, I'd accept that.
A 5-year apprenticeship. Yep. And but the curious thing about that, and this is just a little side note, is that it seems to have been that age, that apprenticeship, is lowered to 20 years old by David in 1 Chronicles 23 verses 24 and 27. It does say, it says, these were the sons of Levi by their fathers' houses, the heads of the fathers' houses, as they were counted individually by the number of their names, who did the work for the service of the house of the Lord from the age of 20 years and above. We have here in 24, 1 Chronicles chapter 23, verse 24, and also in verse 27, it continues to say, "For by the last words of David the Levites were numbered from 20 years old and above, because their duty was to help the sons of Aaron in the service of the house of the Lord in the courts and in the chambers, in the purifying of the holy things and the work of the service of the house of God." Interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if that's because now we're in the desert and we've got a few moving parts and a few objects. But when we get to the point of a temple or the planning for a temple, maybe there were now it's a permanent structure. It maybe had larger grounds, and you said yourself there were courts. And there were more things to be done, and so they needed a larger populace of people, perhaps. Yeah,
perhaps. It's just one of those curious things that I don't know that we have a lot of information about, but regardless, there are two different starting dates within the same book, within chapters of each other in the book of Numbers. One explanation is an apprenticeship, but then, as I say, in Chronicles, we have 5 years earlier again, seemingly set by David, but that goes against the Torah, does it not? Or at least maybe it doesn't, but it seems to start earlier than what the Torah requires. That may not necessarily be a bad thing. It's just a curious thing. Throw that out to the listeners and see if they have anything to add to that.
I just want to skip back to Numbers 8:7. It's kind of interesting here, so I'll quickly read it out. "And thus shalt thou do unto them to cleanse them, sprinkle the waters of purification on them, and cause a razor to pass over all their flesh, and wash their clothes and cleanse themselves." So the term here for sprinkling the water is in the Hebrew an infinite term. It's not a one-off thing. It's in all future cases you shall sprinkle the water. It's not that if they sin, if they are unclean and they need to become clean, this is a repetitive act. It's something that we just keep going every time there's a mistake. It's not like you can do it once and say, well, I've performed this ritual once, I'm going to carry on. And what's really cool is that the water of purification we have in English is actually the water of sin. That's what it literally means. And that's because, I mean, it sounds like now that it's sinful water, but what it does is it names the purpose of the water. Like, I'm trying to think of something that we have that describes what it does. A drain cleaner. It's terrible, but drain cleaner is a liquid that cleans drains. And this water of sin is water you use because of sin. So it's good to remember that although we have pretty good translations, and the translations are really, there's two reasons for the translation we read is the way it is. One of them is to help us read it easier, and the other one is to follow the objectives and doctrines of the editor. That's very important to remember.
Fly spray.
Fly spray, yeah, right. So
you don't expect when you squeeze that little trigger that it's going to shoot out all these flies.
No, that's exactly it. That's a good example.
What it's doing is eradicating the area from flies. And here we are with, so the water of sin. Why? Because it's eradicating the individual of sin. Yeah. Therefore, by implication, water of purification.
Brilliant.
Nice. Fly spray. Chapter 9, the second Passover, there's two Pesachs. How about that? So there's the original Passover that they observed in Egypt before they came out. This is 1 year later. Here we are 1 year later. The first one observed in the wilderness before they're getting set to depart. And there's a problem, right? In verse 6, it says there were certain men who were defiled by a human corpse, and so they could not... Now, what does that mean? I mean, instantly a zombie just jumped into my head there. And obviously, that's not what happened.
No, so they came in contact with the dead body of a person, and as such, they are now unclean. They can't take... They can't take part in any of the of any of the sanctuary services. They have to go through a ritual. Now, this would have happened before the original celebration of the first Passover, and as such, they are now asking why can't they be included in that? They want to. This is the cool thing about this. Maybe this is how we can share this whole chapter. Now, when God gave instruction to Moses, he didn't mention the second Passover. And I feel that he didn't mention the second Passover because he wanted to know whether the people were bothered enough to want one. So this could have gone like this. And there were certain people who were unclean during the celebration of Pesach.
Oh, so they just missed out.
And they missed out, and never mind. But because these people came and said, well, what about us? We want to enjoy this too. We want to bring this offering and get involved.
Yeah.
Then the instruction for the second Passover was given. And what that is for us is an example that it's never too late. Just because we made a mistake or something happens and we feel like we've missed out on some sort of element of a relationship with God, like maybe we are going to try, maybe it's the first time trying to have a Shabbat where you completely rest and you forget and you start doing the washing up. And so you think, oh man, I messed up. I'm never going to get this right. I won't bother. But no, you just have another crack at it next week. It's a learning process. We all went through it. And in this instance, we've shown that God's willing to accept that. If you have that change of heart, or if you decide that something that didn't work out for you before could work out in the future and that you want to try, then just do it.
Not only that, but adds to, the list of things that may prohibit you from keeping the Pesach, because in verse 10 it says, speak to the children of Israel. So Moses says, look, guys, stick around. I'll go and speak with the Lord and see what he commands concerning you. And so the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, if anyone of you or your posterity is unclean because of a corpse, or, by the way, incidentally, if they are far away on a journey. And I find it interesting that he throws that into the mix. And how far does that journey have to be? What does that mean? I mean, did he throw that into the mix simply because he knew that there is a time coming where the majority of Israel, certainly at one point, was abroad, where they were thrown out of the land, and they're going to want to know, what do we do in this situation? And perhaps that's why. But it says, or is far away on a journey, he may still keep the Lord's Passover on the 14th day of the second month at twilight. They may keep it. They shall eat it with unleavened bread, and so on and so forth. careful. It's got to be the same thing, same deal. And then it goes on to say, but the man who is clean and is not on a journey but ceases to keep the Passover, ceases to memorialize the fact that I brought you guys out of Egypt with a mighty outstretched arm. That same person shall be cut off from among his people because he did not bring the offering of the Lord at its appointed time. That man shall bear his sin. Oh, and a stranger. If a stranger dwells among you and would keep the Lord's Passover, he must do according to the rite of the Passover, according to its ceremony, and you shall have one ordinance, both for the stranger and for the native of the land. Of course, we have that in Exodus chapter 12, where it talks about this and reiterates, of course, it's circumcision, isn't it?
Right.
In verse 40, what is it? Verse 40, it's in there. No, I'm looking. Here it is. Okay. You shall, if a stranger dwells with, is 48. If the stranger dwells with you and wants to keep the Passover of the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and let him come near and keep it, and he shall be as a native of the land. No uncircumcised person shall eat it. One law shall be for the native born and for the stranger who dwells among you. Jason.
I could get on my soapbox now, but I'm not going to.
Shall I play your little theme music again?
Right. And if a stranger who sojourns among you. Now, I want to know, all right, so it's going to really upset a lot of people. All right, so there are some groups on Facebook, whether they be Messianic or non-Messianic, who declare themselves as children of Israel. Now, what I want to ask people is, now this verse says, and if a stranger shall sojourn among you. Now, that stranger that sojourns among the children of Israel at this point, or the family, okay, so they're spread off on a journey, and there's maybe 12, 15 of them from one family, and they have a stranger who is not of their family, not of their tribe. They do not have a lineage that dates back to their forebears. That stranger believes in the one God, the creator of the universe, and he believes in them to such a degree that he wants to take part in this Passover ceremony. So we have a person who is not Israel in the children of Israel tribal sense, who is declaring his belief in the same God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and who wants to take part in the Passover, and probably, we read, all the other aspects of the Sinai covenant. Now, if that person is a stranger, then what does that make the family that they're with? Does that mean they're Israel, the family of Israel, and he's a stranger to Israel? Because if that person, because when I look at the definitions that I often see come up on websites and on the internet, that a person, by simply choosing in today's age to abide by the Sinai covenant, that makes them self-adopted as Israel. If that's the case, then how can we have a stranger in the text? Why don't we just have another Israelite? Because if that makes you an instant Israelite by doing all the things that the stranger wants to do, then we have an issue, because that means there's a third party that we can't find a definition for. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, look, no, I understand. And actually, we're gonna revisit this point in verse 29 of chapter 10. Actually. Because that's going to come up again.
And what there isn't in the Torah is a Torah for strangers to live by who aren't living within a Jewish community or aren't engaging with.
What you're saying, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you cannot be detached from Israel, you cannot be detached from the Jewish people and keep the Torah and declare yourself to be the Jewish people if you have not joined yourself to the Jewish people. Is this what you're saying? If you don't have a community to join yourself to, be it even an e-community, perhaps. I don't know. There's so much to be defined here, because people say, "What about this? What about that? How do?" But I guess the point that you're making, and perhaps it's a point best kept loose in this day and age when there's so many different ways that you can connect with people. But if you're not making an effort to join in some sort of a community that affects your whole life, as the Torah does, with people with the people of the children of Israel, then how are you joining yourself to Israel? How can you be separate from Israel, take on the Torah, and declare yourself Israel? Is this what you're saying?
Yeah, in a nutshell, you nailed it. I mean, I've seen posts that have said, I'm the real Israel. Well, if there is a real Israel, where's your definition for that? Because you can only really get a real Israel, if I'm going to be honest, comes from the 12 tribes of Jacob and the people who stood with them and their descendants at Sinai. Anyone else who joins Israel from that point on physically joined Israel from that point on. And so, I mean, oh, wow. Yeah, so that was my soapbox moment. And it's not going to go over well. But
all complaints to Jason during the Jason show can be made at spiritualbabies.net.
No, I'm not. I will say there's one caveat. I'm not saying that it's wrong for you to choose to live a Torah lifestyle. I live a Torah lifestyle. I have for many years lived a Torah lifestyle. Just be careful how you label yourself, because by labeling yourself in a certain way, you're disinheriting people who are rightfully able to carry that name.
Remember when you became an American?
Right, when I had my hot dogs and I put on my Levi's and I started playing Bruce Springsteen, right?
Yeah, you were an American then.
That's right.
That was great.
I was. So I'm totally entitled for Obamacare, and who'd want it?
Yeah.
But,
Where's your green card?
I know. I should have totally...
I won't give you one.
I know. Or maybe I wasn't wearing an Abraham Lincoln hat. If I'd have worn the hat, they may have let me in.
They might have done. You wrote an article about that once.
I did, yeah. It was a peeve. Really, it was a little humorous look at the differences between Messianic Judaism and how they are trying to portray themselves as a group by adopting a wardrobe and abiding by a set of rules. And people don't let you in because of that. I mean, it's not... and I know there's going to be a lot of people say, why do I have to be let in? Where in the Torah does it say that I need to go through a conversion process? But anyone who went, all right, anyone who was at Sinai who wasn't Israel, and maybe some of the people at Sinai that were children of Israel, that lived a kind of an Egyptian lifestyle, they did go through a conversion process. It might not be exactly the same as the one we've got today, but they definitely learned a brand new set of customs, a brand new set of rules, a brand new way of living.
Mm-hmm. Still, we're going to read about them as well in chapter 11, so we better move on. Now, I don't know why I've underlined something else, and I just have to read it to see why I underlined it. This is, the cloud and fire. Mm-hmm. The pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire. I mean, how incredibly amazing and spectacular! But this is a year they have had in the wilderness, and they've had the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire. Or do you reckon? I mean, it sounds weird to say this, but do you think they started taking it for granted a little bit? Because things happen as we progress through this Torah portion. I guess we'll wait till we get there. But when we get to verse chapter 11, you kind of think, guys. There's some complaining that begins, and you think, hey guys, pillar of cloud, pillar of fire. Do I need to remind you? You turn around and look at that for a minute and just calm down. It's all right.
I think it's human nature to become a fey, I suppose the word is, with things which to people that haven't experienced them are shocking. I mean, if you go to the States and there's like a minor earthquake and you're in California, people just take it in the stride. That's a tremor. But if you've never been there before, then you're in fear of your life.
It's gonna freak you out, yeah.
Right. So I imagine after a year, the awesomeness of this awesome spectacle probably did become very matter of fact because it was there all the time. And,
all the time. The cloud covered it by day, and the appearance of fire by night. I mean, how cool during as the sun is going down and it's just about to go over the horizon, and then there's the sunset and the clouds are turning all colors and everything, and at the same time this cloud, this pillar of cloud is slowly becoming fire-like. And then when the sun is getting deeper and twilight is setting in and the night is coming on, it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter and becoming more and more apparent. How spectacular! But again, this is a year on, and I'm just going to read verse 18 because, like I said, I've got it underlined. At the command of the Lord, the children of Israel would journey, and at the command of the Lord, they would camp. As long as the cloud stayed above the tabernacle, they remained encamped. Even when the cloud continued long, many days above the tabernacle, the children of Israel kept charge of the Lord. They did not journey. Okay, so but when it moved, they moved. So it was basically saying, right, guys, this is it. Time to move now. The cloud is moving. Follow the cloud.
Yeah, in this instance, red means go, and
yeah.
But yeah, it must have been really cool. And every night or every morning, watching to see whether the pillar of smoke and cloud was over the sanctuary or whether it had moved away, because that would have meant that it's time to get a move on.
So they never really knew how long they were going to stick around in one place. Chapter 10, silver trumpets.
They make some trumpets from silver. There's a purpose for those trumpets. And they have different calls for different events, basically packing up, moving on, stopping and settling down. And for verse 2 it says,
use them for calling the congregation and for directing the movement of the camps. There you go. Very orderly.
But these are definitely two silver trumpets. They're not like the shofars we so often see in other passages.
All right, yeah, well, this is what happens. They depart from Sinai, the trumpets are blown, the cloud is moving, it's time to go. There's a whole list of names which we're going to jump over, but I'm going to go to verse 28. It says, "Thus was the order of the march for the children of Israel according to their armies when they began their journey. Now Moses said to," who's this guy? "Hobab, the son of Reuel, the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law."
Oh, hang on. I thought Moses' father-in-law was Jethro.
Well, you know what? He's got a couple of names, so it would appear. This is the same guy.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that, Jethro must have had a certain amount of influence and riches, and, he was a self-sufficient person. He ran his own family, and up until this point, didn't have much to do with Moses' time in the desert. You'd almost wonder why he wasn't there all the time supporting Moses on his quest.
It's a funny thing. First, I'm going to go to Exodus chapter 2, verses 18 to 21, and it does say, it says, "When they came to Reuel, their father." Now, this is remember Moses fought off the shepherds and helped out the daughters of the priests of Midian. Well, this is the daughters. They're coming back, and they came to Reuel, their father, and he said, "How is it that you've come so soon?" And they said, "An Egyptian had delivered," and that's Moses, "delivered us from the hand of the shepherds. He also drew enough water for us and watered the flock." And so he said to his daughters, "Well, where is this man?" And so on and so forth. And Moses was content to live with the man, and Reuel gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses, and she bore him a son, and so on and so forth. Now, later we find out, after the Exodus, that Zipporah had gone back to her father-in-law. Had gone back to her father, rather, Moses' father-in-law. And he, as we know him now to be Yitro, is bringing Zipporah, his wife, back to Moses. They have a chat. Yitro says, "Dude, you need some judges. You need some elders and stuff, because you can't let all the people come to you all at once and complain about everything, and you have to deal with it. You need to delegate, basically." And he introduced a system of delegation. Very wise man. And if I remember correctly, they then went on he went on his way. He went away. But here we have Hobab, the son of Reuel, the Midianite. This would be Zipporah's brother, right?
Right, yeah. And we you were talking about there when Zipporah goes away and Yitro brings her back, and we're not really sure why that is. Some people argue that there was a divorce thing. Some people say that he was moving her away to keep her safe while all the other stuff was going on. We don't really know. And because of that, we don't really
might have been. The last thing we hear about her actually before then was the whole circumcision incident when God sought to kill Moses because the son had not been circumcised. She gets a flint knife and she quickly circumcises the boy, throws the foreskin at the feet of Moses and says, "You are a bridegroom of blood to me." We did a program about that with Tovia. Oh, by the way, did we tell the people what happened to Tovia?
No, Tovia's right here. It's just we've decided to mute his mic, so
we've gagged him. We've tied him to a chair.
so we
Because
can.
we were bored.
Yeah.
That's all. And if you're lucky next week, we might untie
Yeah, we'll
him.
let him talk next week, maybe.
There we go. All right, that's good. Now, do you want another cookie, Toby? Are you all right? No? Okay. So, and now, by the way, so Moses says to Hobab, the son of Reuel, the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law, he said, we're setting out for the place of which the Lord said, I will give you. Come with us. Come with us. Come on. We'll treat you well, for the Lord has promised good things to Israel. And Hobab, he said to Moses, I won't go. I want to go back to my own relatives and my own land. And Moses said, oh, no, please, no, don't leave, inasmuch as you know we are to camp in the wilderness, and you can be our eyes. And it shall be, if you will go with us, indeed it shall be, that whatever good the Lord will do to us, the same will be done to you. And he's basically saying, remain with us, stay with us, and be one of us. And as the Lord blesses us, he will bless you because you will be one of us. Now, we find out, because it doesn't actually say if he goes or not.
No.
Which is really interesting. But when we go to Judges chapter 1, verse 16, it says, now the children of the Kenites, Moses' father-in-law, went up from the city of palms with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, which lies and so on and so forth. And so we find out that indeed they did remain with the children of Israel. That says to me, here is another such example. One is Caleb, who joins himself, who was not of Israel, who joins himself with Israel. Another one, of course, is Ruth, this beautiful story of Ruth, who joins herself to the people of Israel.
And Rahab and her whole family.
Rahab, the whole family, is number 3 and 4. Here is Hobab, the son of Reuel, the son of Yitro, who continues with Israel, and we see that in Judges. There we are. Becomes one with the people.
Cool.
And by the way, when we go to Israel, and we will go to Israel in November, and oh my goodness, people, there's actually one seat left, but if there are people who are listening who would like to come with us on the Tanakh tour of Israel in November, I am in the process of just confirming. I'm pretty sure we can get a slightly larger bus. It's going to have a few more seats, I think maybe 6 or 7. So don't fret. If you would like to come, make sure that you send a deposit through on Truth to You. Just follow the links, truth number 2, letteryou.org, because there's only a few seats left. We're almost full. But anyway, when we get there, we're going to go to Mount Carmel. I really hope we do. And you'll see the Druze. And the Druze to this very day profess to be descendants of Yitro. Anyway.
That's way cool,
just
isn't it?
That is cool.
Because you have to assume that they're telling the truth, because the alternate is that at some point this almost Bedouin-like people needed an origin story, and they went with Jethro and not with something that maybe would have got them a bit more kind of a cooler heritage, So it's the fact that they say Jethro I'm inclined to believe them, because if I wanted to find a really good heritage for my people that was biblical, I probably would have gone with one of the 12 tribes. I mean, why pick an off branch?
Yeah, no, but they did, and so they are the descendants of the Kenites, so they profess. And now they've always had, by the way, just while we're talking about joining ourselves with Israel, a Druze battalion, can I say? I'm not sure exactly what the military terminology is, but a dispatchment of Druze soldiers. But lately they have been saying to the IDF, can we, look, it's nice and all, but we really just want to serve with the rest of you guys because we're one with you. We are one with Israel. And so they have integrated the Druze battalion in with the rest of the IDF. And so they are... Cool. Yeah, it's just really cool. I mean, if people go online and they look that up, they'll get the details. But that was a very recent thing. All right, so I'm going to read 35 because this is just so very cool before we get into chapter 11. And so it was whenever the ark set out that Moses said, "Rise up, O Lord, let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you." And when it rested, he said, "Return, O Lord, to the many thousands of Israel." If we could leave it there, it'd be that'd be a great place to leave it, but it kind of gets a bit sticky after this, yeah.
Like proper sticky.
Do it.
I say so. Chapter 11 opens, and the people are not content. They
No,
are.
they're whinging.
Yeah.
No, that's not. Now, do you have whinging in? You have whinging over there.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
They don't have whinging in the States.
yeah, I've heard that.
They
No,
don't whinge.
we have a lot of whinges over here.
We have whingers, but they have whiners over there.
Ah, right. Well, we have whiners too. Maybe too much of both of them. But yeah, we
Yeah.
definitely have whinges and whiners.
We don't have time to go into the intricate details and differences of those two definitions. Actually, before we do just read on, I'm going to read a little bit of the study note here, just digressing a little bit in regards to Ruel. This is a study note in my New King James Study Bible, the Christian translation here. It says... Hobab declined, but at Moses' insistence, Hobab continued with the Israelites, and it's got that reference there to Judges 1:16, serving as the eyes of the people in the wilderness. In this example of Old Testament evangelism, Old Testament evangelism is the way they put it here. Hobab joined in the destiny of Israel, just as Ruth the Moabitess would later. See Ruth chapter 2. Joining Israel was not just a change of location, it involved a radical transformation of one's life and purpose so that it was centered around the living God. So what changed? Why shouldn't it add to that note so we have no need of the New Testament? Okay, moving on. All right.
Well, yeah, but what I was thinking while you were reading that was that Moses definitely proselytized at least Jethro, right?
I don't know that you would call it. I don't know that I would call it that. I think because it's his brother-in-law, and he's saying, "Guy, I like you. You're great, and you're useful to us as well. And we get on with you, and you get on with us. And stay. Come on, stay with us, please."
You might be right. You might be right.
I'm trying to the truth to you. No, I think it is. I don't think he's trying to convince him to take on a faith. I think at this stage, Hobab is there. He's there. He's like, of course. I mean, you got to remember when Yitro comes to Moses after the Exodus with Zipporah, and Moses says, this is what happened. This is what God has brought us out of, mighty works, miracles, and so on and so forth. And Yitro says, now I know that God is the most powerful God, and he makes that profession. And I think it's safe to presume that Hobab followed in that revelation of his father and remains with the people. I don't think he needs any persuasion in as far as the faith is concerned. But Moses was saying to him, "Please remain with us, be one with our people." And evidently he chooses to do that. I just thought that study note was funny because it kind of cancels out a lot of things. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. For the Lord heard it, and his anger was roused. So the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed. Now I've got consumed some in the outskirts in the tent. Now some is in italics.
Okay.
It's suggesting that there were people consumed. It's like, that's it. You, and you.
Well, it says in my one I have that and the people were as murmurers, so they were kind of gossiping and complaining behind people's backs. That things weren't going as well. But
does your translation suggest that he sort of picked a few out and barbecued them?
Well, it says that the fire of the Lord burnt amongst them and devoured in the uttermost part of the camp, which is the outside edges.
Now Now, if you take away some, which is in italics, it says and consumed in the outskirts of the camp. Now, I think it's probably fair that that's what happened.
Now, can I? Because there is a tradition that these murmurers were not the children of Israel, but rather the mixed multitude that left with...
This is verse 4. Well, what does verse 4 say for you?
Verse 4 says, "And the mixed multitude that were among them fell a-lusting, and the children of Israel also wept on their part and said..." Well,
what do you do with that? Because okay, so you've got the mixed multitude, and then the children of Israel also. So clearly there is a division, right?
Yeah, there is. But this is this is narrative, it's a chronological narrative, and the people were as murmurers, spreading gossip. And so God strikes down those people who were gossiping. And where did they strike down? Did they smite the middle of the camp, which was the four kind of priestly sects with the Kohenites and the Levites and whatnot? No. Did they do the next ring, which were the 12 tribes? No, they did the next ring, the outside ring, and that was the sojourners, the strangers, the people that left.
So that is the understanding. So those on the outskirts,
right? The outskirts,
got barbecued. That is the suggestion that there were people that actually paid the penalty. Okay,
so
now that
yeah,
you're suggesting is the mixed multitude,
right? And so the Israelites here that fell a lusting, they fell because they were listening to these people complaining, and they started to agree. And it's like you don't know where you've got till it's gone. And people, like I've been on journeys before, long haul trips, and I've never really considered the fact that the air quality was bad until someone started to tell me that the air quality was bad. And I think that's the kind of thing that happened here. That Israel itself.
That's true. Complaints are contagious, and so maybe that. But then, so these are the things that they were saying. So they were saying, look, boy, the children of Israel wept again, and they said, who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish which we ate freely in Egypt, and the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. Yeah, the onions and the garlic, that's what you... And then it says, but now our whole being is dried up, and there's nothing at all except this manna before our eyes. Oh, now, this manna, which is a miracle every single day.
And before we go on with that, because it is a miracle, it's pretty awesome, and how amazing would it be to be able to have a look at that and see what it was like. But we remember the fish, which we were wont to eat in Egypt, and then, like you said, it's cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. Those things in themselves do not constitute a meal, right? But they're extras, right? So you put cucumber in yogurt and you eat it when you have something that's spicy and it cools it down, or you make it into a dressing. And the leeks were like a thing to add flavor, and even today, leeks are a component of most soups, and so are onions, and garlic in itself isn't something that fills your belly, but it makes something else taste better. So what they were looking for was the seasoning.
The seasoning.
Right. Yeah. But what's really cool here, and a bit cruel,
the diversity in flavor, I suppose.
Yeah, totally. But they're complaining because of fish. So they want the one thing that really they can't find because they're in the middle of a desert. I find it really interesting that it's fish. It's not goats. It's not anything that they might stumble across. It's something that they're making a complaint, and it almost seems like they're making a complaint which couldn't be fulfilled even by chance, just so they could complain. It'd be like me getting on a plane and complaining that there are no rest stops that I can get off and stretch my legs. That's the kind of complaint they're making. But yeah, they're looking for the flavor, but what God is delivering, God's delivering the sustenance that they need, and they're just looking for the flavor and the spices.
Now and then we get a little bit of a detail here in regards to the manna. Maybe you've got something different in your translation, but I've got the manna was like coriander seed, and its color was like the color of bdellium. Okay, what's that?
So bdellium features, and I'm going to say it's in Exodus, but I might be wrong. Let me just have a look at my notes.
See, I knew you'd know the answer to that question.
And it's a pearl anyway, I can tell you that much. Or it's suspected to be a pearl. Yeah, here we go, Exodus 16:31. And it's about the size of a peppercorn, it says the coriander seed is. And bdellium, Genesis 2:12, my mistake. Genesis 2:12 says it had the appearance of a white and shiny appearance, which I think may have been like a pearl.
Nice. Okay.
So the only place that comes up is when they're speaking about some precious stones, and bdellium comes up, and they think that that's probably a pearl, but we don't really know.
The people went around and gathered it, and they ground it on millstones, and they beat it with mortar, and they cooked it in pans, and they made cakes of it, and the taste was like the taste of pastry prepared with oil. Yum. Sort of like makes me think of one of those things that are nice.
Well, I mean, I've made a Passover. We make our own matzos, so they're not these hard crackery things. They're a bit like pizza bases. And it can taste a bit like that, or pita breads, or any number of things.
Croissant! Yeah, man. I could totally go a croissant right now and a coffee. Oh, yum. All right, that's what I'm doing first thing in the morning. And when the dew fell on the camp at night, the manna fell on it. And Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, everyone in the door of his tent. Oh, seriously. And the anger of the Lord was greatly aroused. Moses also was displeased. So Moses said, I'll get this. Moses said to the Lord, why have you afflicted your servant, and why have I not found favor in your sight that you have laid the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all these people? Did I beget them? That you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a guardian carries a nursing child to the land which I swore to your fathers. Where am I to get meat to give all these people? For they weep all over me. Ugh. They weep all over me, he says, saying, give us meat that we may eat. I'm not able to bear all these people alone because the burden is too heavy for me. If you treat me like this, please kill me here and now. If I have found favor in your sight, if you like me even a tiny little bit, can you just end my life so I don't see this wretchedness? Oh, my goodness. That's how bad it was.
Do you have so I don't see this wretchedness?
No, sorry. It says and do not let me see my wretchedness is what it says. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. Okay. Because that would have meant something completely else. Yeah, poor old Moses. I mean, it's not the first time either that he's gone to God pleading and arguing and asking why he's been allotted to this group of people. But no, God delivers, as he always does in his own special way. He delivers what Moses is asking for, but maybe not in the way that Moses was expecting.
Well, he says, so the Lord said to Moses, gather me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be, the elders of the people and officers of them. Bring them to the tabernacle of meeting that they may stand here with you. Then I will come down and talk with you there. I will take of the Spirit that is upon you and put the same on them. That's so cool, isn't it? Elaborate for us.
Well, what we don't want to think is that Moses had kind of 100 units of spirit, and God then took some of those units and gave it to each of the heads of the elders, or each of the elders. So that depleted from Moses' one. The one of the images I read was that if you light 70 candles with one candle, that first candle doesn't shine any less brightly. I think that's a nice way of putting it. But what this, when I was reading this and thinking, well, this is a one-off thing. Someone said during the week on a thread, Moses spoke to Abraham, Moses spoke to Moses. Sorry, I'll take that back. Someone said on the thread on Facebook that God spoke to Moses and God spoke to Abraham and God's even spoke to Sarah but does God speak to you? I mean, how can you put your faith in this book when you don't have that kind of relationship? And I've been thinking about that in context with lots of things that I've been doing during the week. And I mean, the obvious answer there is that it's not God's place to speak to us with an audible voice. It's up to us to listen to what He's given us in the form of this Tanakh, in which He put down all His instruction, and that His one-on-one speaking relationships were with people for us to go and read later. I mean, that's just the way it is. So where am I going? This is a portion where we see that the spirit that was on Moses was shared and put onto these other people to make them able to do his part of his job. Like they become mini Moseses. They became able to deal with some of the trickier aspects of Moses' job as a diplomat and a governor and a judge. So do we see that kind of thing today? And I think we kind of do. On a personal level, over the last 2 or 3 years, when I've been doing these programs with you and I've been doing these programs with Tovia and with Rabbi Federo and Neely and Skobak, and although I've listened to them many times on their programs and although I've read lots of their stuff, we've actually got a chance to engage in them, and some of that fire that they have has changed. Rubs off. Right.
Oh, that's so true. That's a really good example, yeah.
And it's changed my perception on things, and some of the frustration and even anger that I may have had from my tradition before has diminished a little because
dissipated.
Right, because because talking with them, I've got a new perspective now on how to use that and turn that into a tool. And so I think that although this thing here is, probably really spectacular to witness and to see the changes in these people because it happens so fast, but I think definitely in the lives that we lead, we have the opportunity to take on the spirit of people that we trust and of whose opinions we trust, but B, moreover, maybe more important, we are examples to other people. So we should always make sure that the light that we're burning is worth other people trying to ignite in themselves. Look at that. That
Yep.
was good. Well,
That was
I should get a
yep.
church.
That was brilliant. That was very well said. I totally agree with that. And so it goes on that the Lord says, I will put the spirit that is on you, Moses, I'm going to put the same upon them. They shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you may not bear it alone. And then you shall say to the people, consecrate yourselves tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore, the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall eat not 1 day, not 2 days, not 5 days, nor 10, nor 20 days, but a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have despised the Lord who is among you and have wept before him, saying, why did we ever come up out of Egypt? Oh, man. So Moses said, the people whom I am among are 600,000 men on foot, and yet you have said, I will give them meat that they may eat for a whole month. Shall flocks and herds be slaughtered for them to provide enough for them? Or shall the fish of the sea be gathered together for them and provide enough? And the Lord said, has the Lord's arm been shortened? You all right there? You okay, Moses? Have I become somehow less, you don't think I can do this? And now you shall see whether what I say will happen to you or not. So Moses went and told the people the words of the Lord, and gathered the 70 men, the elders, the people, and placed them around the tabernacle. And the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to him, and took of the spirit that was upon him, that being Moses, I suppose, and placed the same upon the 70 elders. And it happened when the Spirit rested upon them that they prophesied, although they never did so again. Wow. How about that?
Yeah, and I'd like to know when they say they prophesied, what do you think that meant in that context?
That's a really good question. Generally speaking, in Western civilization, I guess when we hear the word prophesied, that means speaking of that which is to come. There's another definition. A prophet is someone who is commissioned by God to bring people to repentance. I think that's probably more likely, because they're bearing the burden. They're bearing the burden of Moses, and they're calling back to the people to bring them to repentance, and speaking of the mighty works of God and everything that he has done for them, to give them back perspective and to bring them back to a state of repentance, to say sorry, that we grumbled before you, God, perhaps. What do you think?
I think that it's probably along those lines. I'm of the opinion that it's maybe because we did a program before with Tovia, and we went over the word Nabi, or spokesperson.
Nabi, yeah.
And that person being someone that God can speak to, that the prophet can speak back to, but that God gives a message to give to the people, which incorporates what you just said. And I think that for that short period of time, they were able to communicate with God in a two-way stream, just like Moses does. But that part of it stopped. That's the way I look at that. Because we do, in the Western idea of a prophet is someone that foretells the future, but I don't think that's if you want to say the biblical way. We call someone that tells the future a prophet, because many of the prophets in the Bible did portray most of the things that are going to happen in the future. But that's not why they were called prophets. They were a prophet before they did that anyway, because they were speaking to God and to the people. And so it can be confusing if we come from. It's very nice actually to have that idea that, especially if you're a Christian, the idea of a prophet just portraying what's going to happen in the future is excellent, because you're not really interested so much in what's happening today. You're waiting for that future event when Jesus comes back and does all the stuff. And so prophesying means that thing, talking about what's going to happen in the future, but not so much when we read the Tanakh. In fact, I would say that 90% of what the prophets speak of in the Tanakh is current day events. They're talking to the Israel that they're with to bring that Israel back on that day, and they're issuing then proclamations of saying, if you don't, this is what will happen in the future. It's a two-way street. But I think in this instance, to sum up, because I'm rambling on a little bit, I think that these 70 elders, for that instance, were given a chance to speak to God and have a direct line to God, maybe to let them know that this relationship that Moses had is real. Because if they were going to get the spirit of Moses, then obviously they need to have a little part of that to solidify their understanding of what the relationship is.
So not only these 70 elders, but two men that remained in the camp. One was named Eldad, and the other one was named Medad.
Medad, yeah. And Medad was in the camp.
Yeah, there's me Eldad, and there's me dad. And the Spirit rested on them, and now they were going, they were among the listed, those listed, but who had gone out to the tabernacle, yet they prophesied in the camp. And a young man ran and told Moses and said, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp, and Yehoshua bin Nun, Moses' assistant, as is Joshua, one of his choice men, answered and said, Moses, my Lord, forbid them. And Moses said, what, are you zealous for my sake? Oh, that the Lord's people were prophets, all of them. That the Lord would put his spirit upon them. And Moses returned to the camp, he and the elders of Israel. And what follows is the wind that blows in all the quail from the sea, and they are knee deep. It says 2 cubits above the surface of the ground. They're literally knee deep in quail. Believe me, that would have stunk. I mean, as a person who keeps chickens, and I love my chickens, I don't want to ever be in, I don't want to be wading, a couple of feet deep in chickens.
There are a few things in creation and in the text which show me that God has a sense of humor. One is a duck-billed platypus. I mean, really.
I love those guys.
But the other one is that it's quails. If there is a more difficult bird to, the meat to work ratio on a quail is nothing. True. They're so small, they're covered in feathers. So these things are about the size of, I don't know, a big orange. And you have to take the feathers off and then skin them and then try and eat what little meat there is on them.
You got to gut them. And right. You got to prepare them in the same way as a chicken. You just don't get that sort of big meaty reward as you do with the quails. Just there's not much on them.
No. So you've got like maybe 4 mouthfuls on each bird. Now,
I'd go a quail over a pigeon maybe, but I've never had a pigeon.
But why not like a flock of swans? Would have been so much more satisfying for the people, but they had to work for them.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and I think that was the point. Now, one thing that kind of only really lifted itself up to me while we were looking through this is that they had to eat these for a month. So they were like knee deep in birds, which would have meant a lot of work. And you're right, it would have after a while it would have really started to smell. Before they had this absolutely fresh daily supply of sustenance that they needed. All right, so. They were bored with that. I think that's the issue. And God's saying here, look, I can give you what you want, but if that's all you get every day, you're going to get like sick to the teeth of this. And this is going to go bad. It's going to be more work for you. So, you should be careful what you wish for. I think that's the thing here. But I find it great that he says, you're going to be sick of it. You're going to eat so much it comes out of your nostrils. I mean, that's pretty colorful language.
That's true, but even before we get to that point, something I was going to say. Well, it says the Lord was aroused against the people in verse 33. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was aroused against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. So he called the name of that place Kibrot Hatava, because they were buried, because they buried the people who had yielded to craving. Ooh. Isn't that interesting? So it would appear that those who rushed to eat the meat, and I don't know if that means that they had not prepared them properly, if they hadn't drained the blood properly, maybe, I don't know. We don't really have the details. But while the meat was still between their teeth, as they're craving for meat, God just was, I don't know, disgusted with them and wiped out a whole lot of them with a plague.
The Hebrew for that name is the graves of lust. That's
wow.
Great. That's great, isn't it? So that, for me, that word lust that adds a new kind of there's a new definition now of why they died. Yeah. So they, it was the kind of the wantonness in their heart that caused their death, rather than, it goes back to the beginning. maybe even if they'd have walked slowly to those birds, the same thing would have happened because they wanted them lustfully. But yeah, there's a message there. If you see a flock of quail land in your garden,
Don't rush.
don't rush out. Take your time.
Take your time. That's right. Now, it doesn't get any easier in chapter 12. Here we are in chapter 12. This is the last chapter of our Torah portion. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses. Miriam, Moses' sister, Aaron, Moses' brother, spoke against Moses because of, enter, stage left, and we've never seen her before in the Torah, the Ethiopian woman who he had married. Didn't know that. But evidently he took a second wife, at least. I mean, he might have had more, we don't know. But I'm sure the sages have something to say about it. But an Ethiopian woman whom he had married, and they're grumbling against Moses, Miriam and Aaron, because of this woman for whatever reason we don't know, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. So they said, has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also? And the Lord heard it. Oh my. Now the man Moses was very humble, more than all men who were on the face of the earth. That's an interesting little note. That's verse 3. We understand, of course, that the Torah is to be written by Moses. Jason.
I want to take you back to the beginning of that verse because you might be surprised at what I have. And Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, right? For he had married a Cushite woman. Now, if I go down to my notes, the Cushite woman was probably Zipporah, a native of Midian, which is a cinnamon, which is a type of spice, which is a synonym.
Particularly on croissants.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Man, I'm going to have to get some croissants now.
Yeah.
Which is a synonym of Cushan, the home of the North Arabian people called Kusi. Others take the word, right, fair enough. Others take the word Kusite in the usual sense of Ethiopian, and in that case, the second marriage of Moses would have been to an Egyptian. Which was occasion of complaint from. All right, so fair enough. Right, so there's two views. All right, that's fair enough.
There's two views. One is that it may be referring to Zipporah. The other one is that he indeed did marry, take another wife, and whatever be the case, they are grumbling against Moses, and the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very humble, more than all men who were on the face of the earth. We have to assume, if indeed Moses was the most humble person on the face of the earth, that he probably didn't write that verse, which is interesting because we say that the Torah was penned by Moses, but clearly here it might have been some sort of a scribal interjection from perhaps Joshua. We don't know, but it's difficult to say that you're very, very humble and yet be able to write that verse at the same time. Just a curious thing for people to take into consideration to your own study on that one. Suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron and Miriam, come out, you three, to the tabernacle of meeting. So the three came out, and then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam. And they both went forward. And he said, hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. I speak with him face to face, even plainly, and not in dark sayings. And he sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? Oh my goodness. So the anger of the Lord was aroused against them, and he departed. And when the cloud departed from above the tabernacle, suddenly Miriam became leprous, as white as snow. And then Aaron turned towards Miriam, and there she was, a leper. So Aaron said to Moses, oh, my Lord, please do not lay this sin on us, in which we have done foolishly, and in which we have sinned. Please do not let her be as one dead, whose flesh is half consumed when he comes out of his mother's womb. Oh, wow. And so Moses cried to the Lord, saying, please heal her. Oh, God, I pray. And then the Lord said to Moses, if her father had spit in her face, would she not be shamed for 7 days? Let her be shut out of the camp 7 days, and afterwards she may be received again. So Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not journey until Miriam was brought in again. And afterward the people moved from Hazarot and camped in the wilderness of Paran. Oh, man, that's hard.
It's pretty hardcore. Miriam, we read, was a prophet What's interesting for me there is that it's as if there's a prophet amongst you, then I speak to him in dreams, but I don't speak to Moses that way. So I think by God's definition, there are prophets and then there's Moses. I think that's fair to say. What is lovely in that, I mean, it's really terrible that we've got this, it's nearly, I mean, next week we're going to be talking about Korah, and there's nearly a Korah thing going on here, that obviously Aaron and Miriam felt that their position in the camp was such that they could judge Moses on his choices, and that his position, they had a problem with, because he was able to take in a wife that they didn't agree with, and therefore they felt somehow that they could answer his actions with criticism, which we see next week in the passage for Korah. But the difference is that in Korah, obviously, spoiler alert, there's this sticky end. But in this one, Miriam, not Aaron, Miriam gets punished. But what the nice part of this is that all the punishment is, and I imagine that Moses must have been really annoyed, and God was really annoyed. It could have gone much worse. But her punishment, if you like, wasn't a punishment. She just had to abide by the same rules everyone else abided by when they had that skin condition.
Which incidentally wasn't leprosy, that's right.
Right, and so you can read about that in Tazria. But moreover, the whole of Israel waited. It wasn't, you wait here for 7 days and catch up. Everyone waited for her. So she made a mistake. Aaron came and apologized for their actions and acknowledged what they did wrong. And
Moses interceded on her behalf.
Right, that's it.
So Aaron interceded. Aaron spoke on her behalf to Moses. Moses spoke on her behalf to God, and God kind of relented, I guess, and said, "Look, it's pretty serious stuff, but let her be put out of the camp 7 days, and then after." And it would suggest, it doesn't say, but it suggests that she might have been the instigator of such complaints, and that became contagious among Aaron, and he sort of harped on with her, and both of them got in trouble. Perhaps if she was the instigator, that might be why I don't suppose he got off scot-free, but seems to have avoided such extreme punishment.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. And we read as well in previous Torah portions that there is a link given between gossip and this skin affliction, whether that be on you or the affliction that came on the houses. The rabbis always made a link between that and gossip and talking falsely about somebody. And I think that God is punishing Miriam here with a punishment that suited the crime that everyone would have known. So they would have looked at Miriam, even if they weren't around. Where's Miriam? Well, she's outside the gate because of such and such. And they'd have kind of known that what she had done to get in that position. So it's very kind of publicly outed her because of her choices. But I think it's fair to say that she instigated it. And what is interesting to me as well is that although we read in the text that all sin is a sin against the Creator, really this one was kind of pointed toward Moses. And Aaron apologizes to Moses. So Moses must have accepted that apology for him to then pray to God and ask for them to be forgiven, or at least not killed. Because, I mean, if you're in that position, you must go, oh, wow, God's going to smite them any minute. I really have to get on it. But he accepted their apology, and so did God in his own way. But Miriam, there are always going to be, even if somebody does accept your apology, there's always going to be repercussions for your actions, and this was Miriam's.
Evidently, this is hers, and so that's unfortunately where our Torah portion ends. But I'm just going to read Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 10. It says, "But since then there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face." We did a program on that, didn't we?
Oh, we did, yeah. Prophet greater than Moses. You can find that on Truth to You. Yeah,
you sure can. So that is it. Thank you, my friend Jason of Spiritualbabies.net. What's happening in Spiritualbabies.net land?
Oh, no, you know what? Today, nothing. I'm pre-recording a series with Stuart Federer and Joshua. I'm hoping to start getting those out in a couple of weeks. Other than that, I have a series called Two Witnesses, which is based on a really awesome book by Jonathan Skordal, and I talked to him, and we've collaborated, and I'm doing some videos on that. You can find those on YouTube. And the other thing is the weekly Haftarah portion. So if you enjoyed the Torah Pals, you can find out a little bit more about the chapter from the prophets, which is read along with the Torah portion every week, and you can find that on my YouTube channel as well.
There it is, spiritualbabies.net. Thank you, my friend. And until next week, dear listeners, when we get into Shelah Lecha, I think is next week. The 12 spies going into the land of Canaan. Oh, wow. What an amazing story. We might untie Tovia for that one. And until then, be blessed, be set apart by the truth of our Father's word. Shalom.